This chart compares the estimated net worth of a single family in the 18th century to a global superpower. That massive peak represents the Jagat Seths, an Indian banking dynasty with a fortune worth roughly 1 trillion modern dollars. At the same time, the entire national economy of Great Britain was a fraction of that size. The wealthiest entity on Earth wasn't a king or a nation, it was a private bank. The family built their initial fortune in the 1650s through saltpeter. It was the essential raw material for European gunpowder. By monopolizing the supply out of Patna, they generated enough capital to move into the much more lucrative world of high finance. Transporting physical gold and silver across 18th century India was nearly impossible. The threat of highway robbery made long-distance trade a lethal risk for anyone moving bullion between hubs like Calcutta and Delhi. To solve this, the Jagat Seths scaled a proprietary financial system called the hundi. Instead of moving metal, merchants deposited their cash at a Jagat Seth branch. In exchange, they received a hundi, a slip of paper functioning like a modern bank draft. The merchant carried that paper to Delhi, presented it to the local branch, and withdrew their cash. The physical money stayed locked in a vault, entirely removing the risk of theft on the road. Their second major revenue stream was a total monopoly over the royal mint in Bengal. Because merchants used dozens of different regional currencies, they were forced to exchange their local coins for the Seths' standardized royal currency to pay their taxes. The family took a commission on every single exchange. By controlling how money was moved and how it was printed, the Jagat Seths became the shadow rulers of the subcontinent. They held the liquidity required to finance wars, bail out emperors, or bankrupt those who opposed them. In 1756, a new ruler took the throne, the 23-year-old Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowlah. Unlike his predecessors, he was openly hostile to the merchant class and immediately demanded a 3 crore rupee payment from the Seths to fund his military. When Mehtab Rai, the head of the family, refused the payment, the Nawab's temper flared. In front of his entire open court, the Nawab stood up from his throne and slapped the world's wealthiest banker across the face. The Nawab then threatened to have the family members forcibly circumcised if the money wasn't delivered. For a devoutly religious Jain household, this transformed a financial dispute into an assault on their religious identity. The bankers left the court in silence. That night, they decided that their safety could no longer be guaranteed under the current administration. They resolved to use their capital to identify and install a more compliant ruler. Siraj-ud-Dowlah viewed the Seths as mere subjects to be taxed. By turning his creditors into enemies, he had given the men who held his nation's debt a powerful motive to find his replacement. The Seths needed an armed force to execute the coup. They turned to an aggressive corporate entity operating on the coast, Robert Clive and the British East India Company. A secret contract was drafted. The Jagat Seths would provide the funds for the East India Company's military campaign. More importantly, they supplied the massive bribes needed to ensure the Nawab's top commander, Mir Jafar, would betray his leader on the battlefield. The deal was simple. The British would install Mir Jafar as a puppet Nawab. In return, the Seths expected to resume their financial monopoly and operate their mints without government interference. At the 1757 Battle of Plassey, Mir Jafar's divisions simply stood down. Despite having tens of thousands of soldiers, they offered no resistance, allowing Clive's vastly outnumbered force to claim victory without a real fight. The East India Company didn't win Bengal through superior technology or tactics. They were hired as corporate mercenaries by local billionaires to settle a personal grudge. After the coup, Mir Jafar took the throne, but he quickly realized he wasn't in control. The East India Company began draining the state treasury, presenting the new Nawab with endless demands for compensation and rewards for their services. The British then moved to dismantle the bankers' primary revenue stream. They demanded the sovereign right to mint their own coins in Kolkata, bypassing the Jagat Seths' monopoly and taking control of the currency themselves. British officers also began using their tax-free trading passes to run private businesses. Because they paid no taxes, while local Indian merchants did, they could undercut every merchant in the region, effectively seizing control of the local markets. The bankers had financed a coup to protect their monopoly, but their chosen partners were a rival corporation with no intention of sharing the market. The Seths had bought their revenge, but they had also invited their own replacement into the room. By 1760, the British replaced Mir Jafar with a new puppet, Mir Qasim. However, Qasim tried to protect what was left of the economy by abolishing all internal taxes for Indian merchants, removing the British advantage. As the British prepared for war against him, Qasim intercepted letters proving that the Jagat Seths were, once again, offering to finance a British strike to remove him from power. Qasim retaliated in 1763 by luring Mehtab Rai and his cousin to a fort in Bihar. He ignored their offer of a 4 crore rupee bribe for mercy. He had the bankers executed and their bodies thrown into the Ganges. With the family's leadership gone, the East India Company simply refused to honor their debts. They initiated a massive default, flat out denying the millions of rupees they owed to the Jagat Seth estate. The British then implemented new land laws to legally seize the Seths' remaining properties. They used the legal system to absorb the family's vast landholdings and integrate them directly into the company's growing empire. The surviving heirs of the trillion-dollar dynasty were eventually reduced to begging. By the mid-19th century, they were surviving on the 100 rupee monthly pension provided by the very company they had once financed. The fall of the Jagat Seths is a cautionary tale about the limits of financial power. When private wealth is used to trade away a nation's sovereignty for personal gain, the bankers eventually find that they have no nation left to protect their wealth.